The episode begins with Ben playing around with a disc that could record and play back holographic videos, having fun goofing off with it, as Gwen rolls her eyes at him as they see Max putting one of those discs into a yellow envelope. She asked what he's doing with it. Max tells them that he was mailing it off. When they asked why, he tells them that he's keeping a promise to an old friend, confusing the two of them as he just tells them it's a long story, to which they remind him that it'd be a while before they got to the next town for him to mail it off. Sighing, Max agrees to tell them about it, as we then start getting a flashback of a younger looking Max walking down the hallway of a building filled with aliens and humans alike, as he'd gone into the break room where a dark-haired man with 2 cups of coffee in front of him had been messing with the same type of disc we'd seen Ben using earlier on. Max walked over to the man sitting across from him and asks what he was doing with the hollow disc. As the dark-haired man responded, they were trying to prepare for the future, and sat one of the cups in front of Max for him to drink. Asking what he'd meant, the man then told Max that ever since they lost Barton, he'd decided to start trying to record messages for his son's important milestones in life. First crush, first breakup, birthdays, other important holidays, so on and so forth. To which Max responded that was smart and that he should start doing that for his grandson. The two sipped their drinks, and before they could continue the conversation, they were called to their boss's office, and so got up and went to see what was up. After being told about a case that they'd wanted the two of them on, telling them some punks had been using Nostinians to power their weapons, and that they'd wanted them to find out what was up and stop them. With a nod, the two then head off to the garage area where they'd gone to get specialized insulated suits for the situation, or at least Max did. Then the two walked up to a dark green colored custom designed muscle car with 2 black stripes going down it from bumper to bumper, with Max complimenting the ride, stating seems he'd finally finished it, to which the dark-haired man stated, "Better than that old rust bucket of yours." The flashback cuts out as we see Max getting out of the rust bucket and goes into a package delivery shop that neither Ben nor Gwen had ever heard of before, and goes in showing his plumber's badge to the person behind the counter and telling them he'd needed same-day delivery. Gwen asks what this place is, and Max says it's a special delivery service set up for the plumbers, both active and retired. So long as you have a legit badge, they'll deliver, no questions asked. And after the person behind the counter scanned his badge and read his information, they told him it wouldn't be a problem for same-day delivery. The trio then head off to a local diner and begin looking at the menus, trying to decide what to eat, when Ben asks Grandpa Max what happened next, and we return to the flashback with the dark-haired man driving the car and Max riding shotgun as they kept an eye out for anything unusual. Suddenly, something blasts the ATM outside a bank, and the two of them stop the car, getting out to see what was going on, finding someone that looked like a gym rat holding a taser that was poorly rigged up to a glass tank with a metal rod in the top. Inside the tank was an alien that looked a lot like a living battery creature of some sort. As that person goes to collect the money from the ATM that they'd blasted, a second man used another of those setups to blast the door to the bank itself, shooting it open since the bank was closed at the moment for whatever reason. Max calls out for the two of them to freeze as the dark-haired man puts his hand on one of the tires of his car, and the rubber began to cover his body as if he was absorbing it and making it some sort of coating on his body. The guys tried to zap the two of them, but thanks to the rubber and insulation, it didn't really have much effect, and they go to start fighting the guys off, trying to figure out a way to beat them and free the Nostinians, though a pickup truck of some sort with chains and spikes on the tires pulls up. There was a man that was rather buff and had a red-haired mullet with a skull painted on their face, standing on the back of the truck, and they had a poorly rigged up blaster weapon of some sort with a large tank with several Nostinians in it, and started blasting at them. This they'd have to dodge as some of the dark-haired man's rubber coating had been blasted off of his shoulder by it, with the barrel slowly returning from a red color back to its normal white. The dark-haired man started complaining while holding his shoulder about how to deal with something like that, but Max had taken notice of something and began telling him a plan, stating that the gun had to cool down for a second there. Maybe they could trick Fistrick into causing it to overheat. With a nod, the dark-haired man then put his hand on his tire again, reabsorbing the rubber and covering the blasted off part so that it was all one solid coating again, and the two then began to blast at them, before ducking down again as the man started blasting at them again. The two ducked as Fistrick began to fire the blaster again as it had heated up and started to cool down. But they didn't give them time as they split up, going around the car firing their own blasters at the man called Fistrick along with the two gym rats. They'd managed to blast holes in their tanks, freeing the two Nostinians from them. In retaliation for what they'd done, the Nostinians then zapped the two that had them in the tanks, and taking them out of the battle before starting to blast at Fistrick too. While having to deal with 4 people at once, the blaster started to heat up very quickly and then exploded in Fistrick's hands, causing him to drop down with his hands seriously damaged. After they were able to disarm him, the Nostinians then zapped Fistrick in anger until Max called for them to stop and walked over to them as they watched him confused. The dark-haired man joining them and telling them that they'd get them all back to Nostine Quasar, showing them his plumber's badge so they'd know they were there to help. Max cuffs Fistrick and the two gym rats, ending the flashback with Ben questioning whatever happened to his old partner from his plumber days, to which Max responded sadly that he'd sacrificed himself to help save the entire solar system from Ragnarok, but that was a whole different story for another time. Closing out the episode, we see a dark-haired kid with dark brown eyes around Ben's age, maybe a year older, pressing play on the disc that Max had mailed with a hollow video of the dark-haired man from the flashback telling them happy birthday.